So with the coming of Dominaria United, we do have a change in the rotation. And I am going to be going over the cards that are going to be rotated out of Standard that some of you may be sad about, but probably most of you may be happy about. Welcome on in, Dragon Folk. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day today. I know I am. I know that the early access on Arena for Dominaria United is happening right now, and I plan to get as much information from that as possible in regards to making any new decks for when the rotation starts. So, for those of you who don't know what rotation is essentially every September they come out with the fall set, and that fall set then removes the earliest 4 sets in the standard rotation from rotation. So the sets that will be leaving rotation in standard currently, as of September 9th, when Dominaria United is released, will be Zendikar Rising, Kaldheim, Strixhaven, and Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, the Dungeons & Dragons set. So what I wanted to do today is kind of go over some of the cards that were big hitters in those sets and let you know how I feel about them and why they made such a crazy good impact in the standard of their time. Now, luckily, I'm pretty sure most of these cards, if not all of them, are able to be used in the Explorer format or in Pioneer as well, right? Of those Eternal formats or non-rotating formats, just got to check the ban list. These things will be in there. But for this specific thing for Standard, of course, they are going to rotate out. So we are going to go ahead and start off with Zendikar Rising. So I've chosen a few cards from each set that were pretty much very prominent in the Standard ladder, in the ranked ladder in Magic the Gathering Arena, as well as just about anywhere in the actual, the format itself. So the first and foremost that I'm happy to see go, but I saw less and less play of it towards the end of our standard ladder. But the card that is leaving currently is Luminarc Aspirin. So Luminarc Aspirin was a pain in the butt for so many people, and yeah, it's got 1 toughness. It'll die to removal super easy. But if you got enough of those things out, it became such an insane problem early on in the standard meta. But with the release of Crimson Vow and with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty and with Nuka Penna, Aspirin was dying so quickly comparatively to anything else. And if you were able to get yourself an Aspirin out onto the board, it definitely did work as long as it stayed there for 2 to 3 turns. You were looking pretty good. Luminarc Aspirin was practically an auto-include in just about every single white deck that existed in Standard, and I don't know why you wouldn't. Every combat phase, you get a +1/+1 counter on any creature you control. That's pretty great. Just handing out counters like that, especially with the introduction of keywords like Coven, and with all this other support for go wide, do a bunch of damage, creatures, Luminarc Aspirin was definitely a great choice. So we're going to move on to our next card in Zendikar Rising that I'm sure a lot of people are happy to see go. I know I'm happy to see it go, but as much as I love the actual card itself, it is kind of insane to deal with, especially if it happens late game. Now, this card was not as powerful this meta as it was during its last rotation when it was a new card into the set, but Scoot Swarm is the card in charge here. So Scoot Swarm was a enemy for just about every single player back in the previous standard, which included Ikoria, because you were able to mutate on top of Scoot Swarm and cause a whole bunch of other things to go wrong. So that was a big deal. Now they paired that up with Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, and while it's a very expensive card and a very good green card at that, that was pretty much the only way you could make Scoot Swarm super viable. Although it did make 1,000,000 bodies, it absolutely was not as powerful as it was during the mutate days, but still very much so a force to be reckoned with. I think anybody who, if you had removal in your hand and you saw your opponent play a Scoot Swarm, I would imagine you'd kill it immediately. That's just the way it went. So I'm happy to see it go, only because I'd like to see new mechanics enter the board, right? And with Scoot Swarm gone, we don't see so many game-breaking bugs in Arena, or so much, just drop a whole bunch of lands. I know that the introduction of the house lands that came with New Capenna, where they're essentially all Evolving Wilds, but only for the house colors, and you gain a life. That was really powerful for landfall, and causing a lot of problems. So I was happy to see that go, personally, just because I think mono green can do a little bit better. I think adding green into that is great at the end of the day. So moving on to our next Zendikar Rising card. Actually, we're just going to stick with the landfall thing. I'm not happy to see landfall go. I love the idea behind landfall, but I am happy to know that I can still use it in Explorer for things like this. The next card, as I'm sure you could all tell with the introduction of landfall, Ruin Crab. So Ruin Crab has quite literally been the bane of most of these beginner players' existences. A lot of people were like, Ruin Crab is the worst card because it's a 1-drop and you just keep playing lands and you don't even have to do anything. You just mill your opponent's deck 3 cards at a time. It's a nice little body to block any kind of low-cost creatures. And until your opponent gets a whole bunch of removal or creatures that are above 3 power, it didn't really matter. I mean, you were able to just continuously plop down these lands and cause problems, right? In Evolving Wilds, playing in Evolving Wilds had you mill your opponent for 6 cards. Now, 6 cards in a 60-card deck, that's like 10% of your deck that has just gone to the wayside. So that is quite a bit to go in regards to that. And the fact that they can do that in, usually Ruin Crab stays around like every 2 turns, anywhere between 2 to 3 turns, if your opponent didn't have an answer. And if it stayed around for any longer than that, you better be playing Golgari, because there was no way you were going to actually get the cards you needed. And along with Ruin Crab, we do also lose another mill card in the removal of this, which is Maddening Cacophony. Maddening Cacophony is the fantastic sorcery that allows you to, for 1 and a blue, mill 8 cards from your opponent's deck, right? Just right off the bat, mill 8 cards from your opponent's deck. And then you can also kick it. So if you kick it for 3 generic and a blue, which is just 6 mana overall, you get to mill half of your opponent's deck. So that also leaving is pretty intense as far as the mill strategy no longer being as absolutely viable. I do believe a lot of the mill that we're getting now is mostly in black, I want to say. But blue's mill doesn't seem to be as powerful as it was then. And especially with the loss of Maddening Cacophony, for a measly 6 mana, you can mill half of your opponent's deck, which is insane. And 8 cards for 2 mana, you run 4 of them. You want to mill 32 cards for an easy price. That's already half your opponent's deck. I'm just saying, Maddening Cacophony also leaving. I'm sure a lot of people who have lost to mill are very happy about this. I, for one, like the idea of an alternate win condition, and I like the idea behind mill. But I am happy to see that people who are beginning are going to be able to find their way into a new type of deck, as opposed to relying on mill strictly because everybody who is not... I believe a lot of new players try to play mill specifically because they don't know how to get through blockers and do damage efficiently and use their removal spells efficiently. So milling just kind of you don't have to worry about attacking if you mill. You don't have to worry about blocking if you mill. you just cast spells and you're fine. And you have counter spells because you're playing blue. So, like, there's plenty of things in regards to that, but I think a lot of people are happy that that mill is no longer going to be as prevalent of a thing, at least until somebody figures it out. Then the next card in Zendikar Rising that I'm actually sad to see, only because we are going into an enchantment heavy, creature heavy meta with Dominaria United, is Feed the Swarm. Feed the Swarm was like one of the best. I think once people got the idea that Feed the Swarm was like the instant removal that you should play in black, everybody started playing it. Its price spiked to over $1, and it's a common card. And it's genuinely really, really good. But it won't be seeing play anymore in the standard, and frankly, that is at least okay, because we do have other enchantment and creature removal that is in these future sets. But to see just such a key piece getting removed from Zendikar Rising, it is pretty crazy. So now we're going to move on to Kaldheim. Kaldheim, I believe, is one of these sets that we're actually losing a lot in. Going through the ranked ladder on Arena, you see a lot of different decks, but just about all of them follow right around the same pattern. You see maybe only like 3 to 5 decks, depending on where you are in the ladder and what format you're playing. Obviously, with Standard, there's not a whole lot to play, and a lot of people in from like Gold and below don't see a whole lot of play against like Esper midrange or Jund midrange or Naya, whatever. Like a lot of 3-color decks, you don't see that stuff. But there are, one of my favorite decks is unfortunately getting hit very hard, very, very hard, and that's Orzhov Angels. All of these, I just like put them all in one specific thing. All of these angels are no longer going to be in the standard, and more specifically, their support is no longer going to be in the standard either. So just real quick, some of the best combination of Orzhov Angels I've ever laid my eyes on. Youthful Valkyrie, which was able to get a +1/+1 counter every single time an angel entered the battlefield, and it was a cheap flyer, 1/3. It did so well. And then we have, of course, the Vengeful Reaper. Vengeful Reaper is another angel that you can foretell for 1 in a black, and it has haste and death touch and flying. So that is something that you can really just slap out at any point during foretell and be able to get some additional damage off, as well as buff your other creatures. Then you have a big powerhouse of a creature, the Valkyrie Harbinger. Valkyrie Harbinger having lifelink, having a lot of power and toughness, and every time you gain 4 or more life on your turn, you get a 4/4 flying angel creature with vigilance. Like, to think that it's a token generator, all you have to do is gain 4 life, which is super easy in Orzhov Angels, let alone any white, even if you just like mono white angels. It's incredibly easy to do with things like Luminarc Veteran, one of the new clerics that is in white. And then also you can buff all of your creatures with Luminarc Aspirin, another one of those cards that are now going to be out of rotation. And that just completely changed the game. And then, not to mention, the best angel to come from this entire set, which is Righteous Valkyrie. Righteous Valkyrie has done so much work, and just about everyone who's ever gone against a Righteous Valkyrie knows that's the card to kill. Anytime an angel or a cleric comes into play, you gain life equal to its toughness. And then if you're at 7 more life than your starting total, every creature gets +2/+2. Now, I don't think you quite understand the grasp of that, because if you get creatures to come out and they get +2/+2, and then you play another creature, that creature gets an additional 2, which means your 2 life gets buffed up. You get more life. It's so hard to completely stop that domino effect from occurring. So Righteous Valkyrie, even if you just had 2 on the field, unless you had 2 kill spells or a board wipe, and your opponent had no answers, you absolutely were going to make it out of there. No problem at all. And then, of course, the other angel support that we have going on, which is Furia's Retribution, one of the best enchantment sagas that we've seen for angels. I mean, it speaks for itself. It's an amazing card. Then we even have Rampage of the Valkyries. It allows you to create a angel creature token, and on top of it, anytime one of your angels dies, your opponent sacrifices a creature. What? You can just start throwing these tokens into stuff, and if they die, if your opponent tries to do anything, you just block it, your opponent sacrifices stuff. If you get 2 of them on the board, your opponent has to sacrifice 2 creatures for every single angel that dies. It was insane. I'm happy to see that Orzhov Angels is gone, only because I know how powerful it was, and genuinely, I hope to take what has come from New Capenna, as well as any future sets, like Dominaria United has a couple in them, and make a fantastic Orzhov Angels deck in Pioneer. But unfortunately, we are looking at what we're looking at, and this current standard is not going to have a lot of angel support as of right now. So the odds of your angels doing well, kind of low. Then we're going to go ahead and go into the infamous Goldspan Dragon. So Goldspan Dragon, of course, the favorite amongst all red players. You pretty much had to play this if you were playing red. And it's gone. No more having to worry about that 4-drop that's going to come in with flying and haste, and you get a treasure token when it attacks, and if you try to kill it, you get a treasure token, and your treasure tokens generate 2 mana instead of 1. There was so much value for Goldspan Dragon, and I'm happy to see it gone, only because you're able to now utilize things. I mean, the mana fixing is going to be a little bit more different in this regard. But I love Goldspan Dragon to death. It's going in every dragon deck I ever make in my life, because why would you not play this dragon? It's just so good. Then, of course, another Kaldheim staple that everybody has been playing is Esika's Chariot. Esika's Chariot is the token generator for green, and I think just about any deck that ran green had some form. If you ran tokens, you can Esika's Chariot into making more tokens, and this was a powerful staple for a lot of people for a long time. It's kind of fallen off since, but with the addition of Dominaria United, unfortunately, we are going to be losing Esika's Chariot. And that means that, you're no longer going to have those cats. Those cats are going to have to find a different way home now. There's not going to be a chariot to bring them home. But enjoy it in Pioneer or Explorer, because that's pretty much the best place you're going to have it for. Couple more for Kaldheim. So this next one is actually going to be Tergrid, God of Fright. So Tergrid played a pretty big part in Mono Black for a while. And the reason was because, well, obviously, she's got 2 different sides to her. One side allows her to essentially gain control of anything that you may discard or sacrifice. And in Black, having your opponent sacrifice creatures or discard things is common. So the fact that she can just take that, put it on her side of the battlefield, and not have to worry about any consequences is great. But I also see a lot of the Lantern on her back there. The Lantern that is the other side of Tergrid, that card has proven to be a big nuisance in Mono Black as well. A lot of control available there. And more importantly, you're able to continuously tap it as long as you have the mana, effectively either wiping your opponent's board or dealing upwards of like 6 to 9 damage to your opponent if they just decline to actually sacrifice anything or discard anything. So the Lantern was a great combination with Tergrid. Unfortunately, we will not be seeing her anymore in this standard. And of course, a big thing in regards to Kaldheim is a lot of the snow mechanics. So not only the snow mechanics, but any of the removal spells that we're missing from here. You have Blood on the Snow, no longer going to be here. Doomscar, no longer going to be here. Frostbite, it's not going to happen. Blizzard Brawl, also gone. All of these cards that would turn the tides of an early battle strictly because they would just wipe the board entirely. Obviously, you still have things like Meat Hook Massacre, and you have some removal that came like by invitation only in Crimson Vow. You have Depopulate, you have Farewell. Those cards all still exist, but these ones specifically, very snow-oriented. If you had Snowland, it was able to do extra stuff, specifically with Blood on the Snow and Blizzard Brawl and Frostbite. It was an insane level of removal for very cheap with so much return. And that's all going away now. So we're not going to have that kind of removal anymore, which is fine, right? I'm sure everybody will find a way to do more removal, but I think the amount of board wipes are going to be significantly less during this meta, unless, of course, you are playing white. I think white still has at least 3 board wipes that they can put into their decks, but most don't. So I'm curious to see what the board state of things are going to be, especially since I know that I think a lot of these decks coming up are going to be very go-wide situations. So we'll see what happens. Now moving on to Strixhaven. Strixhaven is having a few of its cards leaving. More specifically, we have a few only here that I'm going to briefly talk about. Professor Onyx leaving is pretty crazy. A lot of people were using Professor Onyx in Mono Black due to her removal spells and your ability to, especially due to her Magecraft ability, where essentially you could, anytime you cast or copied a instant or sorcery, you gain 2 life and your opponent would lose 2 life. You played a lot of destroy spells, a lot of spells to have your opponent discard things, and your opponent would lose life, you'd gain life, and then they'd also be discarding or removing the creatures. It was very powerful to have her out. So obviously she was 6 mana, so that was a lot, but she made her mark, and that was definitely the case. But of course, now in the standard, we do have Liliana of the Veil, which is significantly better Liliana than Professor Onyx. So we're going to see what kind of shenanigans she gets up to when we build all of our, black colored decks, because there's going to be a lot of people playing black. I'm certain of it. Next on there, we also have the removal of Elite Spellbinder. Elite Spellbinder will no longer be in standard. Now, that's fine, because we do have Anointed Peacekeeper. Anointed Peacekeeper is actually almost a better version of Elite Spellbinder. It's a 3/3 for 3 with Vigilance. And what it does is, as Peacekeeper enters the battlefield, you can look at your opponent's hand, then choose any card name. So not even just from your opponent's hand, you can choose any card name at all. And spells your opponent cast with the chosen name cost 2 more to cast. And activated abilities of sources with the chosen name cost 2 more to activate, unless they're mana abilities. Which means that you don't even need to choose a specific card in their hand. You can choose any card in their deck that you know that they run, and you can make it cost 2 more, regardless. So very, very powerful, and considering you can run 4 of them, right, I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of shutdowns of decks, because as soon as certain cards continue to get blown out of proportion and not able to be used, so strictly because they're going to cost 2 more, and if people aren't able to be fast enough, this is going to ruin Mono Red Burn. This is going to ruin any fast decks, right? So I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this, but it is the replacement to Elite Spellbinder. The only downside is this one does not have flying, but it does have a better toughness, and it's got vigilance, and it can choose any card name. So very popular. Then, of course, we have Vanishing Verse. Vanishing Verse was crazy because not many people used it to begin with, but once you started to see a lot of the cards that did a lot of work in Standard be mono-colored, Vanishing Verse definitely took care of them. Just instantly destroyed them for a super low cost. It exiled them, actually, if I recall correctly, so that is even better. So being able to do that and just kind of get rid of a big power card in your deck definitely is where you want to be as far as removal. So with the rotation, that card will no longer be available, and there will not be that, exile a monocolored creature for 2 mana. So that is going to be taken away. You're going to have to find other things to run in Orzhov if that is what you plan to do. And of course, the biggest thing from Strixhaven to be removed from Standard is going to be none other than Expressive Iteration. Expressive Iteration now being, I believe, if I recall correctly, banned in Explorer and Pioneer. Absolutely insane. It's no longer going to be used in Standard. You're not going to see people fish for all this stuff and, be able to go off and do all these crazy abilities. Expressive Iteration was by far the best kind of, look through your deck, draw support kind of thing, because it allows you to essentially exile a land. You can play the land from exile. You get to draw a card and put something in your graveyard. You thin out your deck better than anything else, and it's super cheap. So that is a huge deal for Izzet players or anybody that plays blue-red. That is absolutely going to put a little wrench in the plans, but we'll see, right? Everybody seems to be pretty innovative when it comes to Standard, so we'll see what exactly gets put in, to change that out. So finally, we move on to Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So before I move on to Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, I just wanted to thank you all for being here. I hope you guys are really enjoying the content that I'm bringing to you, and feel free to leave your comment down in the comment section below and let me know what some of your favorite cards are that are getting removed through the rotation, and what are some of your least favorite cards that you're happy to see gone from rotation. I'd love to hear from you. And while you're down there, make sure to like the video and subscribe as well. So, moving on to Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, we do have quite a few more cards. Again, for a set that a lot claimed was awful, that there was not a lot of very good power in it, that a lot of, these issues occurred, I think mainly they were all talking about things such as Pioneer, Modern, Commander, right? And even still, these cards made huge waves, but they did really make huge waves in Standard. We have Loth, the Spider Queen. Loth, as a black commander, was absolutely terrifying because she was so difficult to get rid of. I mean, incredibly difficult. She was able to summon 2 bodies for her first cast, and then all she needed to do is that every time a creature died, she got loyalty counters. So you played in Golgari with a bunch of pests and a bunch of those spider tokens. Next thing you know, she's got a whole bunch. And these spiders had menace, like 2 menace reach 2/1 spiders for like 3 was what the cost was. And it's insane. I mean, the value there alone on just that one ability was enough to turn the tides of the game depending on what you had. So, very much so a powerful planeswalker that we're no longer to be seeing anymore. Again, we're getting some pretty powerful creatures and planeswalkers in black in Dominaria United, and we do have a few in there now. So, I'm sure she'll get replaced, but I'll miss her. I wish I had more of an opportunity to use her, and I think I will if I ever play anything in Explorer or Pioneer, but that's pretty much the case for Loth, a very powerful planeswalker. Next up is Portable Hole. Portable Hole is no longer going to be a thing. That was very cheap removal for a lot of people in white, and with that being gone now and completely gone from Standard, people are going to have to find something else. Now, they could use Temporary Lockdown, which is one of the new cards from Dominaria United, and I have a feeling they will. I have a feeling that is going to be the thing that changes the tide of battle. But is it going to be as quick as Portable Hole? I think we're just going to have to wait and find out. The next one on the list is actually going to be Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Again, back to the mill. Another mill card that is getting completely wiped from the meta. Tasha's Hideous Laughter being able to be doubled with so many different cards from Strixhaven that allow you to copy spells. A copied Tasha's Hideous Laughter, that ruined decks, because not only did it get rid of cards from your deck, but it exiled them too. So no to the graveyard or anything of that sort. You couldn't use Golgari to get them back. They were all exiled. So to get rid of at least, I mean, most Tasha's Hideous Laughters got rid of at least a third of your deck, and most of that is land going away and so on and so forth. So unless you played mono green, you were losing a lot of cards. And I'm kind of happy to see this one go. This was a very powerful card, and still is, and still will be used to this day. But to see it so, it ran rampant in blue, and it just changed the tide of battle. I mean, when you're spending all this time searching for cards that you need, and you can't find anything because everything that you need is exiled because of one card, it's kind of an important thing to look at. Of course, also another big thing, I'm going to say these are probably like the two things that I'm super sad to see go from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And the first thing is the creature lands. Creature lands leaving are something that I didn't think I was going to utilize as much when I first saw them, right? I saw them and I went, oh, I don't know how that's going to be viable. You know, it's just another land, and then, like, sometimes it'll be a creature, but, like, people can kill the creature, and so, yada yada, but, like, every one of these creature lands were viable. Every single one of them. The Den of the Bugbear you used in Goblins, and it got you more Goblins to do more synergy with Goblins. It was insane. And you also had the Cave of the Frost Dragon, which was a flyer. You were able to get a flyer out and go over your opponent's stuff. Hive of the Eye Tyrant. I mean, good golly, a menace 3/3 that got rid of a card in your opponent's graveyard, exiled it. That's pretty powerful. The only two that I didn't see a whole ton of use of is Hall of Storm Giants and the Lair of the Hydra. And even still, both of those were very prevalent in decks in those colors, because sometimes you just need that. Sometimes you just need a 7/7 giant or a Hydra with a whole bunch of abilities to bring out, like, sometimes you just need that body. And it's definitely going to be sad to see them go, because after a board wipe, being able to know that you can rely on a creature to help you out, and it's a land that you've had down since turn 1, pretty great. But now we just kind of have to figure out what else we're going to do. If you get board wiped, you better hope you have an answer to that, because there absolutely is no stopping that from happening now. At least it's going to be harder to come back from that. And then the final thing on the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, little thing here is the class enchantments. I loved the idea behind the class enchantments, and I remember when they first came out with those, I was like, man, I'm going to get a whole rogue deck going, a Dimir rogue deck, where I just, like, start using my opponent's creatures and my opponent's cards, and I can just start using them for my own gain. The cleric class has been absolutely dominant in Orzhov Angels, and as well as any deck with life gain. It's been absolutely insane. You also have the wizard class, which is helping a lot of blue players get a bunch of cards, and also have no maximum hand size, which is fantastic for blue. And things like warlock class, paladin class, even ranger class, the best class, the dated best class in the entirety of the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set, which allows you to summon a wolf, allow one creature that you control that's attacking get a +1/+1 counter, and then you can start looking at stuff from the top of your library. It's a very powerful enchantment, and it got a lot of play in green, especially in, like, Selesnya. You were able to get a lot of stuff there. It's just adding +1/+1 counters every time you attacked. Very, very, very good. But it's gone now. And all these cards that we talked about, right? The entirety of this is, it's bittersweet, right? We're talking in depth about every single card that has left the current meta. But a lot of cards are actually going to be entering the meta, and you'll see some change, but I don't think it'll be super drastic. Selesnya life gain is probably going to be Selesnya enchantments now. We have, is it spellcasters more than is it, I don't know. I guess it was spellcasting still. It hasn't changed. Golgari will probably change a bit. It'll probably be more about Phyrexian and like getting your stuff big and so on and so forth. Even Orzhov, Orzhov is going to be cleric based as opposed to angel based. At least personally, I think that's how that's going to go. But you let me know in the comments what you guys think. I'm more than happy to talk with you guys about all this and kind of give you a lot of information in regards to what is leaving the standard and what you can expect in the new one. I'm going to make a new video probably soon after this that is going to contain all the cards that I'm happy about in Dominaria United. These cards are going to be replacing a lot of the cards and decks that I play, and I am very happy to see how they work and what kind of cool combos I can pull with the new cards from Dominaria United. But again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. What's your favorite and what's your most favorite and least favorite card that is going to be leaving standard? And let me know, why is that the case, right? How many times did you have to go against a clever Lumimancer, right? That's one of the things I'm looking for. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do really appreciate it. And thank you so much for allowing me to capture your attention for more than 5 minutes. And I'll see you all very soon. Nerd out.